So, because we're going to be doing some meditation guided work in here today, along with all the other information. So, any questions along the way, please just ask away. So, we're going to start talking about the basics with the tools, the physical tools, and then we're going to move along and we're going to move into the energetic aspect of the tools. And of course, I know I promised everybody here a free dowsing rod today, and we're going to get into that and to learn how to use those on the energetic fashion. So, is there anybody in here who uses the L rods on a regular basis? Awesome. So I might have one of you guys jump up here and teach us how to use L rods in the proper fashion, because I'm a little bit not so traditional in my dowsing. So anyway, to get started, and again, I'm Brian Besco from South Dakota, Twisted Sage Studios. I took on where Slim Sperling left off, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with Slim Sperling, who made the big copper hoops. He passed away in 2007. He was at a lot of these dowsing conferences. And a lot of dowsers use the Tensor rings. And we call them Tensor rings. Slim called them Light Life rings. His widow, she has copyrighted Light Life. And so me and the gals from Dances with Water came along and coined the term Tensor ring. And then plus Slim came to me in 2010 and pushed me to put the information out there. So we have websites dedicated to making the Tensor rings. We give out all those measurements that we use. And so, you know, we just put all the information out there so it couldn't be copyrighted. So you can still purchase Light Life rings. And then there's also a lot of people in the world who are making the Tensor rings now. We actually work with a lot of different people all over the globe and mentoring them on how to make these, not only on the physical, but energetic. So a Tensor ring, this copper ring, it's when Slim found out about this, Slim and Bill Reed was his friend. Bill just passed away here this last spring. But Bill Reed and Slim Sperling were working together. Hey, folks, come on in and make yourself comfortable there. We got some information to hand out to you, too. So Slim had a lot of help on the creation of these tools. What they were doing is they were using dowsing to find geomagnetic lines of all different flavors and varieties. The Hartmann, grid, Curry lines, all that. All these geomagnetic lines that would be, you know, that could carry non-beneficial energies with them. And so Slim and all of his friends, they found the idea of stapling, which is taking a copper rod, an L-shaped rod, and putting it in the ground. So you're going to you use your dowsing rod to find the inflow line of a geomagnetic line into your place. Once you find that line and the direction of the flow, then they would simply take a little L rod and put that into the ground. Essentially stapling is what they call it. And that would cause the geomagnetic line to hit that, bounce up and over, and go down and under that particular space that they were working in. So then they found out about these sacred measurements. Mary Harding, she's wrote some of the pyramid energy books and such. She was working with another gentleman who discovered these different measurements within the Great Pyramids in Egypt. And these very specific measurements that they used to build those pyramids, they were doing the studies on them. They found one specific cubit, and a cubit is simply a standard of measure, is what a cubit is. And there's all different kinds of cubit measures. And these cubits were from ancient times when they were building all the megalithic structures, and the geomancy, which is the situating of sacred site to sacred site. So they would use these cubit measures to measure everything out. They found a cubit measure in the Great Pyramid that has the sine wave of hydrogen, which is 8.3 inches. So you cut something in a straight line 8.3 inches, and it creates one sine wave of the hydrogen atom on there. And so those are producing frequencies. So there's these cubit measures that you cut anything into a very specific measurement, and it's producing frequency. So they started to work with those straight line cubit measures and did more stapling and moving geomagnetic lines and things like that. Then Bill Reed and, hi there, Bill Reed and Slim ended up having the idea from, there was a gentleman who in the 50s coined the term tensor, and that was a mathematical theory. Well, they found out that he was working with these hoops, and so what they did was they took that sacred measurement and they put it into a hoop, and then it created a dual field. It created a field of a positive right-hand spin out one side and then a negative spin out the other side, so it was a dual field. And they played with that for a little while, and they're like, well, there's got to be a way to create a positive field on both sides of that ring. So they did like what they did in electronics is they folded that wire in half and twisted it into a right-hand spin, and then they brought the ends back together. And so the tensor rings, copper is actually creating a flow within the copper wire because it's a piezoelectric flow, because copper is a crystal structure. And so when they make the copper wire and they elongate that wire, it creates the crystalline structure within that wire in a one-way flow of energy, of that piezoelectric energy. So these guys have a one-way flow this way and this way. And so as it creates that counter-rotating flow, both sides of this are producing a beneficial energy. So this guy here, it shines out this way and this way in a counter-rotating vortex flow out of both sides. And again, cut to that 100,000ths of a millimeter of these different sacred measurements. And in that catalog, it's more than just a product catalog. In the first few pages, there's a little bit of information in there. Some of it's what we spoke on in the Tesla technology conventions. We speak there once in a while and try to, work with more of the scientific community on these tensor fields. But then some of it talks about the different measurements out there that we use. Some of them were based on the Great Pyramids and other places around the world. And any more of the measurements that we're using are more based on the newer energies coming onto the planet. You'll hear me discuss things about working with these different guides and these different new energies. And that's from my sister Brenda. Brenda Schnoes. She is the one who really helped me get into things on an energetic fashion, because when I first started making the tensor rings, it was all about the science side of things. And then Brenda introduced me to the whole energetic world of this, and that just blew that science side of my mind away, and there's no turning back. So, yes, ma'am. Oh, certainly, you bet. So let's see, the tensor rings are simply a field. They create a field. And really today what we're going to be doing is the energy work. And so the reason that they go hand in hand, the tensor fields, is because the field is fantastic. I mean, a tensor field in itself, it makes water lighter in weight in the lab. It brings water to its original crystalline structure. It restructures electromagnetics. But what you put into the field is where the true magic is, and that's the consciousness work. So for the years I was making these things in a scientific way, that I would make these to the very sacred measurements, to that 100,000ths of a millimeter, and then once we found out, and that's why Slim, if any of you guys know Slim's work, he was always doing little balls on his rings, or else he was gold plating them, different things, because he was working with them to try to amplify them in the ways that he knew how, which was on the physical. But once my sister stepped in and helped me to see these things on an energetic level, and seeing that the creations that we create here are created here first, then we found out that the true power and potency of these tools lies in that higher level. And that's really where I want to take everybody today, because the reason we're talking about the tools is the tools are simply the physical anchor for that higher level work. But I'm going to teach you guys how to do that higher level work to where you don't need the physical tools. These are simply training wheels for us. They allow the mind to and the body to feel the energies. They allow you to attune into and know that these things are possible, but we're going to do it all on our own. So let's see. Tensor fields. So I'm sure you guys are welcome to come up here today too during break and play with the rings, because a lot of people already know, you take these rings down over the body and it just aligns, balances, cleans, clears. As you run it down, you can feel sticky spots, and then you just keep moving. And when you're doing it around somebody, even if you don't feel energy, most people can feel where it sticks, where there's blockages. And so when you're doing this with each other, we'll just have you guys partner up right after break and just play with each other to see if you can feel those sticks and blockages. It's a pretty amazing thing. So as I was saying, where these things are created on that higher dimensional plane, we call them etheric templates, just for a lack of better term, because there's a lot of energy tools out there that work because of intention or geometry. Those are some of the two major energy tools out there that we work with, are things that are made with an intention and a geometry. The problem with tools that are made simply by intention is that you have to use your intention for them to work. So somebody can actually make a paper clip to be beneficial to your cell phone. So you just put that energy into a paper clip, you put it on your phone, and your phone's beneficial. That paper clip lands on the floor, somebody else picks it up, it's just a paper clip, unless they have the intention that that is transforming your phone into something beneficial. So that's what a lot of these tools are simply placeholders for our attention and intention. The tensor rings, well, then geometries. Geometries are different yet, because geometries are innately bringing in different frequencies. And then we get to the things like the tensor tools, where they're made from sacred measurements. These sacred measurements produce frequencies, whether we believe it, intend it, or not. Those are produced in a frequency by those very specific measures. And then that's the same with a straight line measure as well as a tensor ring. So you can drop a tensor ring on the ground, and it's always going to do the same for everybody who picks it up, even if they don't know what it is. But yet our consciousness, our intentions can amplify everything that we do. So they work hand in hand, these tools and our intentions. So anyway, where they're created on that higher dimensional plane, the etheric templates, our templates are, to me, how it presents is that they are in this dome, in a pyramid, and that's where all of our etheric tools reside. And then we anchor them into the physical, through the heart space, and into the tools. So when we create these, the twisting of the wire, where you are working with that crystalline structure, is where these are most important. And we teach people how to make these. I mean, we have videos on how to make the tensor rings and everything and give out the measurements. So when you're twisting the wire is where you are in the heart space and you're connecting to the energetic aspect of these tools, and you are bringing them into the physical. And so that's the process of where we are the physical anchors to bring that in. So where these are housed, they're very well guided, guarded, protected. I work with a being called Heimdall. He's an Arcturian. If you've ever seen the movie Thor, he's that gatekeeper of the Rainbow Bridge. That's the Arcturians. So Heimdall is the one who protects my templates. Now, we've helped other people around the world who are making the tensor rings. We've helped them to create the space for their templates and help them bring in their guardian protector for those templates as well. Because again, the reason that these are so much more powerful than a tool that is based on just geometry or intention is that they exist throughout all these different levels and layers that we as a human and a spirit and a soul exist upon. And so the work that we do isn't just on the human level. The work that we do is energetic all the way through. So that's like my sister Brenda. The reason she's such a powerful, powerful healer is that when she works with somebody, all she does is have the person go into the heart space, bring in their entire light, and she has them use their light. That is how we see people with fist-sized tumors disappear in 2 weeks, people with pancreatic cancer sent home to die, cleared. It's those magic and miracles that we see because we are working on everything in those layers. Because as most good energy healers who are working with cancer will tell you, is that cancer always begins in those emotional bodies. So we see this as simply the lower density form of everything else that we are as energy. So we exist here, everything begins here, and then manifests into the physical. That is our entire physical structure, from us to our entire world. Everything is energetic first, and then we manifest that into the physical. And so that's why all the tools that we use in the consciousness work that we do has such a profound effect. Because the consciousness work that we do, we go into the heart space, we work with that higher consciousness or soul, however you see and say this. This is beyond beliefs. So we work with everything throughout there, and then it changes our entire everything. So it's really exciting stuff, you guys. This really is. And so we'll try to get this to where you guys have a tangible feel for this stuff, where you can actually feel this energy work that we do and notice the shifts within your own self and the things that you're going to be working on. So before we get into the rest of that energy work, I guess we'll try to get a lot of this heady stuff out of the way. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll begin, the actual energy work meditation stuff. Another one of the tools that we were using was a wand. And again, those sacred measurements that create our balance and harmony rings, which are these guys here. Now, the harmony rings and the wands are based on a sacred measurement, the standard Teotihuacan unit, the STU. Now, this specific measurement, there's a lot with it. Now, Slim used the 144 was what he used, and we call it 144 megahertz because that specific tensor ring that Slim began with actually produced 144 megahertz frequency. You could use an oscillator and drop that oscillator down within here to find an actual frequency of 144 megahertz. And then Slim was working with a mathematician, Hans Becker, and they discovered a 177 megahertz ring. And that was, and that's the sacred and lost cubit, if you guys are familiar with Slim's work. And so that's where we began, was following Slim's work. And then we started working with dowsers to find specific measurements that produce other frequencies of rings. So we found the 188 megahertz, we found the 333 megahertz, which changes the color of sound, which when you're out there doing all these different expos and you have a crystal bowl, which I brought mine here, I have a crystal bowl that plays a pink color of sound for all these crystal kids who can see the color of sound, and it plays pink. You put a tensor ring around it, a 333 megahertz, and it changes the sound color to purple. And so, and then people who are using the crystal bowls for their healing work, their clients can actually feel that subtle change within the sound and feel of those crystal bowls when they're using them. So the 333 megahertz is a pretty phenomenal ring as well. And then we have a 764, which we never figured out. It creates, instead of a two-sided field, that 764 actually creates just a one-side field, and the other side's like a black hole. And we haven't figured that out. Slim, he was trying to show us teleportation, and I'd love to see us figure that one out. So we do try to encourage people who are making these tools to start playing with a lot of these different frequencies to figure out really what the heck's going on with these. So then our past president of the Dowsing Society, Marty Lucas, my good buddy, him and Scott Ertl dowsed in the galactic cubit. And and we just called it the galactic cubit. They were just looking for another tensor ring, and it was pretty phenomenal. But that one is one of the first ones that didn't have a standard frequency associated with it. So you couldn't measure it because it was so multi-leveled and layered that depending upon the person holding it and what they needed at that time is what the frequency was. and they were just so many levels and layers. So that galactic cubit, we created the etheric template, and that's where we really began to figure out the etheric templates. That's where everything really shifted, is when Marty and Scott brought in that galactic cubit, because we were seeing that when you hold on to that specific tensor ring, that there are all these other soul aspects, these parts of us, not just the human part, not the soul part, but other parts of us we found were all connecting to this ring at the same time that we were holding on to it. And so that was really a huge awakener right there, of seeing things on more of the spiritual realm and how these tools affect more than just the human on the physical. So we started to work with the consciousness of water, the consciousness of all the other elementals, as well as the rays of light from the Council of Light, all these different light rays. And we put in the frequencies and properties of rocks, crystals, minerals, everything. So we were able to work with the consciousness of all of this stuff and bring that into the etheric templates to where that was within these rings. Because as my sister and I were doing the energy work, we did all this big, massive clearing work for, we consider ourselves the galactic police for the longest time, that we were working against those who were against the free will of humanity, things like that. So, we'd get etheric implants, we'd get all these entity connections, all this non-beneficial stuff. So that's what we did for years, was we were trying to do that style of clearing work. And so we were looking for something that would clear these energetic implants. And so we talked to people who were into crystals, and they gave us a whole long list of these crystals that they used to clear out energetic implants. And so we were like, well, cool, let's just work with the consciousness. Let's bring those frequencies and properties into these rings, so that way these rings can do that automatically for us. And sure as shit they did. They started to do all that clearing work for us. So, that was, again, that beginning part of finding out how we could put all those other frequencies and properties into these tools. So that was the beginning of working with those etheric templates. So then that just has grown, because then we get, again, to that standard Teotihuacan unit. That particular measurement wasn't channeled in. That one was used to build many of the megalithic structures on the planet. It's also connected to both the circumference and the diameter of the planet. There is a lot of synchronicities in our physical world for that standard Teotihuacan unit. Graham Hancock actually did a big 3-hour video on that unit and everything that it does. So we started to play with that, and it makes a straight line qubit frequency as well as a tensor ring. Some of these frequencies only work for straight lines, some of them work only in rings, some work for both. But so then we're going to get into what this guy actually is. So as we were working with these etheric templates, there's a gal, Shell Darling, she has Golden Light Dowsing. And about 3 years ago, she was like, well, can you make me a set of dowsing rods? Because she was using our tools and all the dowsing that she does anyway. And so I was like, well, yeah, sure, let's make some dowsing rods. And I was like, let's use that standard Teotihuacan unit. And so this is the dowsing rod that we created about 3 years ago almost, with the ball bearing handles and everything. And it has that specific sacred measurement, that standard Teotihuacan unit. Everything's cut to that 100,000ths of a centimeter right there. And we were playing with that. And I was like, well, yeah, because I would like to be able to move geomagnetic lines or clear them. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to take one more step back. When we were dowsing, when I first started to do the dowsing work, I was using the dowsing rods, self-taught, just like Slim was, and finding those geomagnetic lines and doing the stapling and all that. Well, we were doing a class at a city library, and we weren't able to go put the rods in. And we were like, well, you know what? We're going to try an experiment here. So we were all using our rods. We found those lines that were coming into the library, and we found them all, which direction they were going, where they intersected, everything. And then we're like, okay, let's go into the heart space, because the heart space is where we do all of our work at. When we do our work from the head space, we're taking down rabbit holes and things seem real, but they're not. So we always start from the heart space. So as we all go into the heart space, then we were like, okay, let's just intend, visualize, whatever, that these lines are going over the building, under the building, around the building. We did, and they did. The lines all shifted and moved because of our intentions. Well, you know, you hear of people moving clouds in the 70s. I know a 12-year-old girl 4 years ago who was moving clouds. I mean, our consciousness is a damn powerful thing because we truly are the creators of this entire physical reality. So this was a huge thing that we could move these geomagnetic lines through consciousness. So that's when, so that leads into when we were making these dowsing rods. I was like, all right, since this is a sacred measurement, we want something that can move these lines or clear them. And so as we were doing that, this tool came in, this big golden rod, golden and light rod. And we played with it for a little while, and yeah, it was moving and clearing geomagnetic lines and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And my sister's like, well, man, it needs activated yet, they're telling me. So she works with, Thoth just walks with her, Metatron's her right hand. I mean, she's a humble country gal, owns bars and still owns beef cattle and all that, but one of the most, you know, phenomenal people because she's not here at all. She doesn't go down rabbit holes. She's very much in the heart. So she's like, well, I think it needs activated. So she activated this thing, and then it had color and sound associated with that golden rod. Now, the best that we could find is that this great big golden rod is a tool that pre-existed, is something that we did not create, but it is something that is older than the galaxy and perhaps older than the universe. And so this thing is only accessible by the higher consciousness because this is a powerful tool that will clear timelines and realities of the human and other parts of us. So it'll clear timelines and realities, it will clear portal vortexes, it'll move geomagnetic lines, or clear them, whatever is for the highest and best good. So it is a heart-based tool that we have to connect through the heart, and then our soul is how we say it, and you can put whatever word in there you want, your higher consciousness, whatever. But we see that as only the soul that could wield that particular tool. And so that was really another huge step for us in working with these tools, is finding this ancient tool that did all that work. So we just had the golden light wand for quite some time. The rods, they never really, there was something about it, they never came into being until about a month or so ago. If you guys were here last year, I sent a few of these with Marty Lucas, and he was, you know, handing these out along with catalogs and stuff, but they still weren't complete. But now they are, and we'll make sure that you guys all get one of these because we're going to do the energy work with it after break. So we started to teach people. We have a video out there even on YouTube where you get the attunement to that golden light rod. And so basically you bring that in after you're in the heart space, and then your soul is holding on to that great big golden rod, and you can just start doing all that clearing work, clearing timelines and realities that no longer serve you for yourself. We teach people how they can, and it's really fun to work with dowsers who go out and they'll go to a property and they'll douse it out and find all the stuff going on there, whether it's portal vortexes, whether it's certain geomagnetic lines that are non-beneficial, and then they'll go back out to their car, they'll sit in their car or go home, they'll do that meditation, they'll do the work, and then they'll go back and they'll douse for it, and everything's clear. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, you know, the consciousness work, I mean, like, you know, I really feel that if we did the work in this fashion, it could totally change the face of how we approach all energy work, because we have the tools, which are fantastic, but again, they are just placeholders for our attention and our intentions, and working with those higher dimensional tools, we can move mountains. You know, I mean, I think we can do great stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Just to make sure I'm following, so the golden light rod specifically is not, there's no physical.
Nope. Yep, it's just so the golden light rod was simply that physical energetic tool. And then we anchored that into the physical through that standard Teotihuacan unit, through that straight line rod. And so we had that golden light rod for the longest time. And that was also the harmony rings. So then we knew that there was a new ring coming because we were experiencing a whole different shift in the paradigm and the way that we work with things. Because as we used to do the work with all these great big huge beings, going toe to toe with Saturn, things like that. I mean, we work with this consciousness, and over the years, before we used to just bubble it up, send it to the central sun for recycling, and then and just indiscriminate like that. And then it got to be the point here a few years ago where they're like, well, no. You got to start working with these beings, and you got to see them as divine, as a part of divinity. And so we had to change our entire paradigm and structure and how we work with stuff. So for me, my forte was working with entity attachments. I mean, I could walk down the street, pass by somebody, and they say something really weird and off the wall, and I'm like, what? And I turn around and I look, and it's an entity. It's a non-beneficial energetic attachment consciousness. And so I would just clear it. You just go to its heart, and you would clear the cords and contracts. So for like me, I've had 2 different entity attachments that I walked with for lifetimes. When I first started getting into the energy work here about 10 years ago, it's been a skyrocket path since then. But my whole family noticed that my stance, my speech, my mannerisms, my eyes, everything started to change like within a week. And it was because that non-beneficial being we call entities non-beneficial beings, but basically it was a soul contract. So at one time it was beneficial for us, or else my soul would not have made that contract. But for many lifetimes, we're getting like 256 lifetimes, something like that. That being walked with me in my soul and him, both incarnated into the same body. Sometimes it was beneficial for one, sometimes it was beneficial for the other, sometimes both. We're finding that in this lifetime right now, it's not beneficial for either one because they need to go and be complete and whole in themselves, and we only have a certain amount of space as we see it for our light to come in, and so we need to be complete and whole within ourselves. And so that was what I did. And for the longest time, I thought every flipping person on the planet had an entity attachment just because that's all that came to me, Just like when you start to do ghost busting or anything like that, all of a sudden, they just come to you. So as you step into that world, you're just attracting everything to you, but for a very beneficial cause, So with those entity attachments, it's always a contract, oath, vow, promise, cord, something like that. And so that was another thing that our tools were doing, was that all these tools and rings, that is part of what we put into there. Because again, it's the etheric templates. So the etheric templates that these tools are all made from, like that golden light rod, all the frequencies and properties of the crystal plant mineral kingdoms, all of that stuff, and all the work that we learned how to do, whether it's crossing over ghosts or working with entities and clearing contracts, all of that is housed up here in those energetic templates. And that's put into these tools. So any more of the golden fire tools that we're making, they clear entities, contracts, all that stuff. They move geomagnetic lines, clear portal vortexes. I mean, the golden fire tools do flipping everything that we've learned how to do with consciousness work. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. And and that's the thing too, is a lot of this stuff, it always does it in the highest and best good as considered by your higher self. So it never violates the free will of your being. And so if it is something that is part of your path, and that's the thing too, is we just can't go into a little town or a large body of water and say, okay, we're just going to clear this whole damn thing and it's going to be clean and clear, because some of this stuff, it still needs to be there as part of people's paths on their path of waking up. And that's like when we cleared all the church grids, and we'll talk about that on Saturday, is all those dragon grids and church grids and Masonic grids and all that stuff. We weren't able to clear like the Vatican, we weren't able to clear Washington, D.C., all that stuff, because it was still needed at that time as part of that duality, because we live in that world of duality where that is where we have the expansion of creation is through necessity. We have duality, and that is what necessitates us to move forward. And so now then, again, that new paradigm is not within the duality. This new paradigm is us stepping into being creators for the sake of creation and not for the sake of necessity and duality. And so it's really where all these new tools. So the golden fire is something where my sister and I were looking for something brand new. We had just gone to an event and we received this activation of the Sacred Heart, which is that trifold gold flame heart, that golden heart that you always see Jesus and Mary depicted with. We received that activation, as well as some other activations of like that crown of fire, where you always see like the Pope and the keys and all that, and those keys are like to the pearly gates and the golden gate, and then they got rid of it in 600 AD. They got rid of the third gate, which was the fire gate, which was really the cool one. They called it the devil, but it's a big red dragon guarding that one. So we got to go through all those activations, and we brought that into the etheric templates. And so we were looking for a new ring that would hold all this stuff, because this stuff just couldn't be held in any of the specific tensor tools that we had. So they brought in, what they showed us was a new geometry, and so that's something too that where my sister's working with Metatron, and Metatron's very much the one on the geometries, and because geometries will bring information. It's a higher form of math. So geometries contain so much information, way higher form than math. And so as those geometries are coming onto the planet, and some of these have never been here before, some of them have been here before but were gone. But these new geometries is where we found, they were showing us this blue rod about this big, and it was neon blue, and we were like, wow, that's super cool. So we sat there and we just kept doing the asking until we got the specific measurement. We got that specific measurement. And then as soon as we did, then that being took it and he bent it into this hoop, and then it became golden neon. We're like, okay, so we started playing with this whole thing, and that's what we called the golden fire, because we were bringing in that field of that trifold flaming heart. So that golden fire, it's beyond a frequency, it's a field. And that's the thing about the tensor rings, is they are beyond frequencies, they're a field. And so that's why I say that what's in the field is the most important thing. So the golden fire rings and the golden fire wands, which on this guy, that's the measurement of the handle right here. So this has the golden light and the golden fire and the new wands. That golden fire is what comes into that field. And so with that, it contains everything that we've done before, but more. So like the tensor field generators that we have, and this is kind of a rough shape one. This has been around my wrist for a couple of years, or for at least a year. These guys, it used to be in any of the older frequencies, you could put intentions into these, and it would hold and amplify your intention. So we still sell the harmony generators, because a lot of people in radionics and such use these to hold and amplify intentions. It can actually hold the witness in the well for radionics and things like that. Once the golden fire came along, you could not put your intentions into this geometry for it to be held, because it would collapse the field. So even the intention of world peace is not a high enough of a vibration of an intention. And so, new paradigm. New paradigm is basically, we get into the heart, we get connected, we clear all the static and all the crap throughout all of our lifetimes, all of our aspects, everything that we are. We clear, align everything. And so then once we are that hollow bone, as like the Lakotas say, you allow that to come through. So basically what we're doing is we are being the physical anchor for all that light, all those fields, that field of universal peace, the golden fire, everything that we're going to learn and attune ourselves today. We are simply the anchor to that. And the new paradigm is we step the hell out of the way and let the rest of that come in and do its work. Because like trying to put your intentions into these generators, the human just does not have a high enough perspective to do that. And so We just become the anchor point right here on this earth to do that. Which is where, that whole new paradigm's going anyway, is we're just holding the space. So, anyway, I suppose we should probably have a break unless you guys have a couple questions before the break. Yeah.
You mentioned the frequency of the field, so just I don't know that much about sacred geometry and so on, but I would think every frequency has a field or
So the difference between a frequency and a field is a frequency it's like an oscillating wave. So a frequency would be even your visible light spectrum. It would be sound. It would be your cell phones, cell phone towers. All that stuff is within a certain bandwidth of frequencies right through here. And some of them are visible and tangible to us, and some of them are not. So that's the frequency. But what holds the frequency is the field. So the field is the space holder for all the frequencies to exist within. And so that's like with the tensor rings when we were going to the golden fire, is that harmony ring, it has a bandwidth of just a certain area that it holds all those different frequencies of all the tools we've created and everything. So that bandwidth is the field. But then we move on to the golden fire, and all that energy that we were doing, all that energy work, is up here above there. And so it wouldn't fit within that certain bandwidth, that field. And so we had to have this new ring that was a greater bandwidth that would hold all the different frequencies. So I don't know if that explains the difference on the frequencies and the fields. It's really a new concept to us, this whole thing with fields and frequencies, because we'd always seen everything as frequency. But then recently, and that's part of what I'm going to try to bring in here for you guys today too, is this new field that we're working in that is such a higher field that it's where my sister is doing all of her energy work from anymore, and that we're seeing just even more phenomenal magical miracles take place. But it's something that, again, it's part of that new paradigm where we can't go into there with an intention of doing a healing or intention of doing anything. We have to surrender into the field. And then when we surrender into the field, then we see all the magic and miracles take place. So it's just a higher field yet. Yes, ma'am.
So when you say surrender into the field, are you sort of saying that your vibration is becoming one with that field and you're sort of joining with it?
Yes, that would be a great way to put it, that your vibration is more in tune to that field because, yep. So when you go into the heart space and you surrender, you're basically just becoming in alignment with your entire light. And then it is that higher light of yours that is actually within that field and using it. And actually it is that higher you that is doing the doing. So from here, from this perspective, up to here, we just have to step out of that human perspective and just allow. So that surrendering into the field is simply just surrendering into our higher self and that allowing, because the doing still is going on, but just not from our perspective. So thank you for helping to clarify that more, if it did clarify it more. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to, maybe later on, explain, I think I understood you said this was a practitioner's pair.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and so...
And then you describe one as being like this, and then the other one's like this. So can you explain how that works?
So the golden fire, and we just call this the practitioner set because we can use these two rings together. Anytime you add rings together, it amplifies their effects by about 23%. But there's two different fields here. So there's the golden fire and there's the harmony. And they're actually becoming more and more similar every day because as we create everything there and there in that etheric space, that's all becoming a little bit more similar to each other every day. But the harmony is still the one where you're more doing, where the golden fire is the one that it's that higher self that's doing. So we're just kind of allowing. But yeah, the two work together. So if you guys end up playing with these here during break, the smaller one's the harmony, the larger one's the golden fire. And so you may or may not be able to feel these subtle differences between these two rings as you run them over each other. And then two, this is a floor plate up here that's on the floor. You're welcome to stand on it. You can leave your shoes on. It's just the Fruit of Life floor plate. It's all the harmony as well. So we'll take like a 10-minute break or so. And yes, ma'am.
I just have one more question, and I feel very ignorant. So when you say going into your heart space, is that just an intention, or is there a process?
Oh, sure. And we'll actually go through that process here afterwards, because the heart space really is the most important work of all the work that we do. And as a dowser, that is the most important thing you could do, is to go into the heart space, because I know so many people, myself included, that if we go to something, a problem or an issue that you're working on, and we're here, we can get taken down so many rabbit holes and believe they're true. That's the thing about a human, is that they're really wired funny, that they believe almost anything. And so we got to get out of here and into here, because when we're within the heart space is where we're more in alignment with ourself, which I call it alignment with truth, because you're in alignment with that higher source, soul, God, creator, however you see and say any of that. But that's where we're not influenced by the ego as much. Also, when you're in the heart space, if you have an entity attachment, you're not influenced by the entity. If you have a ghost or wayward that is within your field causing issues, you're not influenced by that when you're in the heart space. So the heart space is really a huge thing. Now, the sacred space, the heart, there's actually brain cells within the heart. So when we were born, our consciousness is a little ball of light about the size of a marble. It was within our physical heart, within those brain cells. And then at some time after birth, or as we were a little kid, we moved right up here. And so that little ball of light sits right behind the pineal gland. And it sees out, and it sees the world as separate from us. And so when we look out our eyes with our consciousness, we're looking here from behind the pineal gland. So we got to move that back into the heart space. And the beautiful thing about all these tools and those dowsing rods that you're going to get is that holds the space for that to occur more automatically. Because it used to be, when my sister, she channels a group called the Elders 3. And they would teach us the Trinity breath. And that's what we're going to do today, is that long form breath, where we draw on that earth from the energy, the earth from source, soul, sky, however you see it, into the heart, and the third breath to bring the two together with you. And then at that point, we drop down into the heart space. These tensor fields, any of the tools that we hold on to, because they create a field as well, will get us into the heart space so much easier. Because for some people, it actually can be painful to go within the heart the very first time. A lot of us have blocks there. A lot of us store crap there. But we're going to make this as simple and easy for everybody to get in the heart space as possible. And then once we're there, it's a simple exercise of just taking the 3 breaths and going back. I mean, it's very simple to get in the heart space once you know that you're there. And a lot of people actually go there. I mean, there's a lot of people who will operate from the heart space, but just don't really, they don't see it that way. So we're just going to give you one of the paths into the heart. And so, yeah, awesome. So yeah, we'll just take like a 10-minute break. Tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday until 3 on Sunday, we're going to have that chamber set up. And that chamber is basically, it's a big steel frame. Everything is cut to the sacred measurement, so the frame itself is really flippin' powerful. But then we have one of these floor plates. That's how the golden fire that's in there. That whole chamber is the golden fire. So the first one that we made about 4 years ago, that one, when you stand within it, it totally drops you into the heart space. It aligns everything, clears the soul contracts, entities, all that stuff. For me, the first time standing in the Ascension Chamber, I had tore rotator cuffs from being in the tree business, and both of those were on fire for like 10 minutes. I step out of there, and I didn't have that numbness anymore. So, I mean, our chambers that we have set up in Buffalo Gap, in the Black Hills, South Dakota, we have people that fly and drive from all over the world to come spend 10 minutes in those, because a lot of people are claiming that it's clearing, not only addictions and other, things, but also like cancer and even, all that, the bigger stuff. So that chamber, the one that we just completed, and I haven't even had a chance to sit in this thing yet since it's been fully completed. But what we're seeing what this one is doing is it's again in that new paradigm of things. So what this new chamber is when you sit in there, it is automatically dropping you down to the heart space, but it's connecting you to what we're calling the universal you. So within that whole structure of the higher self and all your soul aspects, I mean, there's a lot of different belief systems in there where they talk about that there's we're one of 12 aspects. So that was an interesting thing, and I don't have one, but we have the torus, which is the 2 seed of lives ratcheted to make a 12-petal flower. And this 12-petal flower, which you probably see in the catalog too, when Marty first came out with that galactic ring, we were seeing that we were, as the human, were 1 point on those 12 petals. In each of the other 11 petals was a soul aspect. And then in the very center, we saw the soul. And so we thought that's how it was, is we had the soul and 12 soul aspects. Well, there's other ways of thought, and then later on I saw it even greater, that we have that 12 petals of all those soul aspects, and there's 12 of those. And so that makes 144 soul aspects and an oversoul. And so no matter how anybody interprets or understands this hierarchical of our light, it doesn't matter. It just presents to each one of us in our own way. But there was actually, I saw pictures of this too out there on the internet of that oversoul and the 144 soul aspects. So however any of that hierarchical of the soul is, who really knows? But what we're seeing this new chamber doing is it's connecting to the universal you, which it's an interesting thing, because this is the work that my sister and I have been doing with her, that she's been stepping into this space for about the past 3 weeks. And I tell you, we've been on the bleeding edge of a lot of this consciousness stuff on this planet, and it's rough. So, especially for my sister, she's the one who's very much on the bleeding edge of all this stuff. But and so I just help to witness and hold space and to do some of the work. But so the universal you, it's, to me, it presents as her in this new field of space. So she's within this field, and it's not her soul, because I can see her soul, but I don't quite understand, because there's all these different aspects. And what we're understanding with the completion of this chamber is that when you step into that chamber, it is connecting you to that universal you, which contains all that you are as a soul within this universe, which is huge, huge, huge. Because that's all of our incarnations, past, present, future, here and everywhere else that we are in this universe. I mean, this is huge, huge. So that universal you is really a big thing. So when you go into that chamber, you're connected to that universal you that clears timelines and realities, because basically that chamber does everything that we talk about in the first few pages of what the harmony does, what the golden fire does, what everything, all the 888s, all those rings in those first 5 pages is what the chamber does, or can hold the space for to occur. Because that's the thing, is that all the work that we do, even when we do work with other people, we're not doing the work person to person. So that's a huge step, because when I first started getting into this whole world of the healing business, everybody's like, well, you got to get permission from the person. And that's if you're just doing Reiki or you're doing person-to-person things. But when you're up here, you're working soul to soul, you don't have to get permission, because the soul is the one who chooses. So just like any of the tools, like this guy here has a half-mile sphere of influence. Every soul, whether they're an incarnate physical human being or a ghost or an entity or a plant, whatever the consciousness is, can receive everything that this will bring through, that golden fire activation, all that stuff. But that is up to the soul. And so that's really, and today we're going to, when we do this energy work, we're going to learn to go soul to soul with another person. And that way, you know, it's just basic, simple stuff. And so then you never need to get that permission. Because their soul will choose whether to take it or not. And that's the way with all these tools where they create larger fields. Like the chamber, the original chamber created a 300-mile sphere of influence. And so it's something, I don't know what this one here does. I don't think it's as large of a sphere of influence because the old chambers were working within a certain bandwidth. These new chambers are a whole different bandwidth. Just like the standard fire generators here, those spheres, those ones had a 10-mile sphere of influence. The golden fire only a half a mile, but it's such a larger, you know, bandwidth that the golden fire is working in. So anyway, it's soul to soul stuff. So it just depends on that. And again, as I'll usually say source and soul, and you guys can plug in whatever word you wish. You know, creator, God, central sun, higher self, whatever, because all this stuff that we talk about and we do and we experience, it's beyond, you know, the religious context. So I don't want anybody to get caught up in any belief systems as we go through this stuff. Again, it's the thing about the funny human and how it's hardwired to, you know, work within those belief structures. So that's another thing that we try to put into the tools is to help people clear beliefs. Because that is one of the biggest things that you run into when you're working with people doing any kind of healing work is it's the beliefs. And that's why working with plants and animals is so much easier because they don't hold on to that crap, you know, so it's so much easier working with plants and animals. All right, so we're just going to start, and let's just start doing some meditation stuff. We're going to come back and do a bunch of other fun stuff still. Yes? Yeah, in that student union building, the one with the glass front there. And so where the registration took place, so up on that, it'll be on that lower floor there is where the chamber is, and that's in that healing area. So you'll have to see Queenie or whoever's there in charge to set up a time and everything like that. And then so Jennifer's going to be running the chamber there on that first floor, and then I'll be up on the second floor with the vending booth up there. That'll be 8:30 tomorrow morning is when that all starts. So it's from 8:30 to 6 tomorrow, 8 to 6 on Saturday, and 8 to 3 on Sunday. So 3 o'clock Sunday, we'll be tearing down and heading back to South Dakota. So be sure to catch her by then. So yes, ma'am.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Oh, please.
Have you had success or experience yet using the chamber with Agent Orange exposure?
So I do remember a gentleman that did have a lot of symptoms with the Agent Orange stuff, and I just do not remember what occurred with that. I really don't. You know, and somebody was asking me too at break, you know, a specific ring for doing specific work. And basically my answer to that was consciousness is the answer to everything. We can use the tools in the chamber and everything else, and they do phenomenal, phenomenal things. But truly the consciousness work is where it's at. Because these tools are nothing more than an anchor for the consciousness work that we do here. So I'm going to take you guys past the tools, and we're going to go straight to doing the real work. The tools are handy, though. I mean, they allow us to go on autopilot. They allow us to let the mind and the human do more of the work because they're a physical tool that we can use. But you know, they're just simply a placeholder. Yes, ma'am.
Do you sell chambers?
We do sell chambers. Yep, we have 2 in South Dakota that are looking for homes. And they were the first generation models. So they're the great big 11-foot tall ones. And so it's hard to find a place that has 11-foot high ceilings that'll house those. But the new chamber that we have, it fits within an 8-foot tall ceiling. So those ones we do sell. They take us, our whole crew, about a month to complete. So they're not too cheap. But well, as a manufacturer of all these tools, we don't charge a horrendous amount above our manufacturing prices. We do have distributors and wholesalers, but they have to rely on passions and wanting to sell these tools because they don't get a huge markup. So part of working in that aquarium business model, and we're just kind of making it up as we go, so however that is. So we're just going to start our meditation. And you can have your eyes open or your eyes closed, and however is comfortable for you. And I'll just shut off the lights too. And so we're going to go into the heart space. Again, we see that consciousness is that ball of light right in the middle of the brain. We're going to drop that down into the heart. All right. So if you just move your awareness to your physical heart, and within your physical heart is where we find our light, our soul's fire. We're just going to take that light or that fire and we're going to drop it straight down into the earth. And if you don't visualize or see, don't worry. It's just even a soft intention. So we're going to drop our light from our heart down into the earth. We connect into that crystal sun within the earth. And then she shines her light right back up with you. We bring that straight back up to soul, source, creator, God, however you see and say that. And then that light comes back down again. So we are grounded and we are connected and we're right in that heart space. So as you're within that sacred space of the heart, you can feel it usually in a body shift. You can feel it in a mental perception shift. The heart space is where we don't have all the negative self-talk. It's just more of a peaceful feeling in there. And it's easy to bounce between the heart and the head. And don't worry, this is an exercise that the more you do this, the easier it is. And you guys all got to the heart space. So that's as simple as we get to go into the heart space. And again, when you have the tool in your hand, these dowsing rods, we can get to it even easier. So let's go ahead and hand out a dowsing rod to everybody. So we have many ways to get into the heart space. There's really long versions where we take a journey into the earth. We work with the earth and she gives us a light and we bring that up into the heart. And we go up and we swim in Star Lake and we bring that energy back down. And there's all different versions of going into the heart space. But really the 3 breaths is the easiest way to do that. And it's called the Trinity breath. And that's what the Elders 3 call it, is the Trinity breath. But it's known in many other ways of thought of a different form of breath technique, of just that grounding, connecting, and coming into the heart. And then the scientific view would be heart math, where they show where your consciousness actually goes into the physical heart. And so as we get the dowsing rods here, we're just going to do another exercise of going into that heart space. We're also going to learn a technique called the 3x3. And the 3x3 is where we stand as our column of light that's grounded, connected. And we have 3 points. We're 1 point. I will be another point for you. So I'll be your second point. And then our third point will call in either Thoth or Archangel Michael. Sorry, our third point will be my sister Brenda. So the 3 points are going to be on the human level. You're going to be one column of light. I'll be a column of light. My sister Brenda will be the third column of light. We'll form a triangle. Then on the 3 by 3, we form 3 more points of light, and these are blue pillars of light. One is Thoth, one is Metatron, and one is Tok, a master healer of the blues. And we don't need to really know the names, but we'll still go through it in the process. And so that forms a 6-pointed star. So then from there, we're going to bring in 3 more points of light. One is the dragons, one's the fairies, and one's the earth elementals. And they're holding space on that plane. So these are all different planes, fields that we're holding space. Then another space that is being held, we're going to be calling in the Council of Light, the Great White Brotherhood, who just are those that are here to assist in that higher consciousness. And then we're also going to call in a council that you as your soul sit on this particular council. So we're going to have all these different levels and layers in what we call the 3 by 3 that we're going to be holding space. And again, we start within that sacred space of the heart, and we be our light. So then once we have that 3 by 3, this is something that I'm going to try to walk through with you guys a few times, because this is one of the most powerful things that we can do in the consciousness work, is this 3 by 3. Because when we do that, there's a space that's created in the center of this great star that is what we call the quantum void, or some people call it the 8th dimension of infinite possibilities. But this quantum void space is where we can step into and we release everything. That's where we can release all of our crap from everywhere, because once we're in that space, we're completely lined up with everything that we are. And then we just do all the clearing work, the connecting work. But now that we all have the dowsing rods, so again, they're all sacred measurements. But this measurement that's right here, this long measurement, is that golden light rod that I talked about. So this is the one right here, this measurement right here, that is the one that when you're holding any of this in your field, it is helping to bring you more into the heart, helping you to become more aligned. So if you just actually hold your rod like this, just up and down, just to give you kind of a visualization of being grounded, of being connected, aligned, right here within the heart. So now then we just take our 3 breaths, one from the earth up into the heart. Take a breath from source, soul, creator into the heart. A third breath, bringing earth and sky right into the heart. And mixing that with you. Now, I don't know if you guys felt that shift, but that is a super simple way to go right into the heart space. Just like that. So some of you that were having a little bit of an issue oscillating between the heart and the head, took you straight there. So now that you're in the heart space, that's where we can do all the work. All right, you can sit your rods down or hold them however you're comfortable, but we're going to go ahead and do this 3 by 3 process right now. So as you are grounded, connected in the heart space, you are a column of light. And I'm going to stand here as a column of light as well. And then my sister Brenda is going to stand as a column of light. So you, me, and Brenda, we are 3 columns of light in your triangle. We're going to bring in those 3 pillars of light. One is Tok, the master healer of the blues. One is Metatron. The other one can either be Thoth or Saint Germain or Archangel Michael, whoever it is that you feel compelled to bring in. That holds that 6th point for you. Now the 3 more points of light. One is the fairies, one's the dragons, one's the earth elementals to hold that space. 3 more points of light. The Great White Brotherhood, that greater council of light, and that council, that greater council that you as a soul sit upon. And as we hold that space, in that center is the quantum void space. So when you're ready, just step fully into that space. And as you do, things flow like a liquid silver. Bring in life, bring in the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, everything. As that flows into that center, what that higher self chooses to release is released. The rest flows back up into life in a higher state. Again, it is our soul, your soul, that is holding the space and that knows what is in the highest and best good. So it's just trusting that higher self. Then we see that you're standing on a platform of geometries. These geometries come up through the body and through the bodies. They're just connecting, clearing. It activates that Merkaba field, that star tetrahedron, the Merkaba. It activates the Merkabas. As those geometries come up through the bodies, it comes up towards the top of the head, through those emotional bodies. Again, just cleaning, clearing, connecting. And it lifts that emotional body just a little bit up out of your field. Now we're going to go straight to source, to your original spark of creation. We go to where you began, and we watch as that light from creation goes through and connects every part of you, everything that you've ever been as a soul, all the way to you in this here now moment. And it keeps circling back around all the way to source again, from beginning to beginning, your entire light. So then just bring that all into the heart. To me, that great big hoop of light, it presents as like all these golden speckles of dust. Each one of those little particles of dust light is a piece of you. One of those little specks is you in this here now moment. We breathe that entire spectrum of light of you into the heart, into the body, bringing all of your light into every cell, in between every cell, all the way into the very DNA of your physical body. So next, as you are standing there, as your column of light, we're going to see this golden fiery disc out in front of the chest. Some will see it as this golden fiery disc with wings. That golden disc comes right into the chest, from the sternum up to the throat. And as that golden fire comes in, it just ignites that golden fire heart, that trifold golden flame heart. You may feel that heat sensation with it, or not. You may feel the cool, clear waters. But as that brings that golden fire, and now then your golden fire from the heart, you can take that fire throughout the entire body, into every cell, in between every cell. Now let's take that fire from the heart, bring that up to the throat, and then straight up to the pineal gland, right in the middle of the brain. And then just set your pineal gland on fire with that golden fire. Now then we're going to witness these infinities, that figure 8 that connects your left and right brain hemisphere. So we're just going to watch those infinities connecting the left and right brain, infinity after infinity. Opening up that right brain hemisphere and just connecting through the pineal gland. And then we're going to send that infinity upwards from the pineal, that infinity that goes up and connects into the quantum mind, into the higher mind. You might feel that opening on around the crown, around that head area. But as we connect into that quantum mind, that is where we find that field of universal peace. So that field of universal peace, just bring that into the entire body. Just let that peace come into every cell, in between every cell, all the way down to your toes. And now then, that field of universal peace is within your physical heart, as is that golden fire, as is your light in its entirety, is all within the physical heart. So with that, you can take that light or that fire or however that presents to you. And if you have an ache or a pain, just watch that light wrap up whatever it is. Because with your light comes that fire, comes that field of universal peace. So any energetic attachments that you have, that field of universal peace flows outwards from you. So anymore, we don't do the big work with entity clearing. We just send that field of universal peace, and it changes everything. And then you can also use that on life situations. It doesn't have to be everything within your physical body. It could just be life in general. You just bring that field of universal peace, that golden fire, your light, again, however you see it. And then we're just going to come right back to the body again. Grounding yourself into your toes. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and be right here. And you may realize that we really didn't go very far. We brought it all right here. That's the way it is when you're in that heart space too, is that we can live with our eyes open in the heart, but we might get popped out of it once in a while. You get cut off in traffic and you start cussing, but you just take your 3 breaths and go back there again. Cool. Does anybody have any experiences they'd like to share with everybody? If anybody can talk at the moment.
My center is like going to a rainbow of the waterfall, and I just flew right down through. This is fantastic.
Beautiful.
Like there's a lot of rainbows in the center.
Beautiful. Yeah, and that's the way it is. The sacred space of the heart, it can really present in different ways. And hers was like a rainbow where she fell into that waterfall, that rainbow right into the center. And you know, and a lot of people will explore that sacred space of the heart because, you know, when you go down there and like the works of like Drunvalo Melchizedek in the Flower of Life books, he talks about, you know, he's the one who Thoth would talk to him about going to the sacred space of the heart. And they would go to that sacred space of the heart and they would explore within there. And they were finding that the world within there was the same as the world out here. And so they would just go into that heart space and explore. A lot of people will go into the heart space and they'll be able to talk to their guides. Because when you're in the sacred space of the heart, nothing can be there except for you and those who walk with you in the highest and best good. So a lot of people go there, they'll ask questions, and you'll either get a nod or a shake, or they'll just look at you like you figure it out. Some people have a little telephone on their sacred space of the heart, where it's just basically a place where you can go for that higher connection. Because it's just you there. Nothing else can be there. So anyway, the work that we did just now was really huge. I mean, that golden fire heart, that field of universal peace, is just huge. I mean, that shifts and changes everything. Anymore when we work with these huge entities, the size of solar systems, and you bring in that field of universal peace and they just drop their agendas and walk away. We're basically, it is giving them a connection from their heart, because we have to see them all as divine and look within their heart and see their fire. And then when we do, for me, when I do the clearing work anymore, and I look at somebody, whether it's a human or a non-incarnate being, you look for their fire, for their light. And to me, I just watch as their light connects, grounds. They just set on fire, because it's bringing that golden fire to them. And when it brings that golden fire and that field of universal peace and your light together with their light, and then that happens for them, that is when they drop their agendas and walk away. It clears the cords and the contracts. So it's really a huge way to work with anybody or anything, is to simply go into the heart space, know that your light has the fire, has that field of universal peace, and then you just connect that with that heart that you see there. And then that's where everything takes place, because it's a soft intention, and we're just here getting out of the way. Because once we're in that heart space and we're working with our light, we're working soul to soul. And we're just here as a witness and as a space holder for that work to occur. Yes, ma'am.
We would not have to be physically with a person or a thing or a situation, because it's all energy. So we can just energetically do this.
That's correct. Yep. And we'll do a couple more exercises here, and we'll just kind of teach you how to go soul to soul, as well as doing the environmental clearing work. So I think I just kind of wanted to break you guys into this, because this was really the biggest part, is the heart space and doing that 3x3 technique. Now we do have, there's a bunch of audios and videos that are free out there on the internet, on YouTube and on our website, that will walk you through that whole process again. Plus we'll have it on this video here that you guys can get from me. And so that 3x3 process is such a huge thing for all the energy work that we do. And the thing is that the more you do this stuff, the more automatic it becomes. It becomes to the point to where you just walk. I haven't ran into a ghost in a long time, because they come into my field and they're automatically activated and crossed over. And that's something that we've been working at for years, is to set it within our field. We used to use our Merkaba to set that into our field, to where anybody that comes within our field automatically gets all the activations that we know how to do, because we're basically going soul to soul with the person. And so that's the way it's going with all the entities, waywards, ghosts, and people, is that after a while this becomes automatic for you. And you don't have to do anything. You just be, and it just occurs. And then we're just setting the whole flipping world on fire. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yes, ma'am.
So like doing that daily will bring us to a place where we will have that around us.
Yeah, and and it only has to be a soft intention too. because that's kind of why I wanted to share that with you, because it's already, that seed is planted now, so that you can do that with your field. Because we are very, very, very powerful beings, especially on that level there. And when we can become in full alignment with everything, we see a lot of good. So let's use our rods for the golden light rod to do the environmental clearing. So again, later on I'll have somebody stand up here and teach us how to use an actual dowsing rod, but for now we're going to use it like the wand and use it like the light rod. So again, it's the soul that is the one who is actually holding the golden light rod, the energetic counterpart to this thing. And so we're going to take our 3 breaths again to go into the heart space. Yes, ma'am?
Question. You're holding it with your left hand. Should we be holding it with our left hand?
No, be easy. Just do whatever you feel. Yeah, that's the whole thing about the energy tools, is that we really don't even need them at all. And that's what the video is, that that golden light rod video that's on YouTube, is that when we do the video, we just show people the rod and then ask them to recreate that so that they don't have the physical tool, but they still get the attunement to it. So, you know, whatever feels right, but we want to try to, everything that we do, be as simplistic and easy as possible, so that way we don't get our minds into it at all. So if you don't want to hold the rod, you don't have to either, and if you want to hold it like this, you sure can too. So this is just the way that I see it, just for more of a visual perspective, for us to kind of see that golden light rod as a visual of holding that up. So as we hold that, and then we take those 3 breaths from the heart, bringing up that energy from the earth into the heart, bringing in that energy from source and soul into the heart, and in that 3rd breath to breathe both of those into the heart and mix it with you, so you are grounded, connected, and in the heart space. And as you hold this rod, it's seen that your soul, your higher self, is holding this rod. Now I want you to go to a place that you want to clear, like your home, your school, your business, whatever it is. I want you to picture yourself standing there to clear that space. As you are standing within that space and you are holding that golden rod, that light from you and the rod expands out in this big bubble. And this bubble goes out past the edges of your property. This bubble goes down deep into the earth as well as over you. So there's this great big bubble. And it's the intention of clearing. So it's going to clear geomagnetic lines, portal vortexes, entities, ghosts, waywards. It's going to clear every person that's within that space. You just have the intention, taking a breath, and release. And not trying to do this stuff. So don't try to clear a person. Don't try to clear the space. We're just holding the space for that to go. So that beautiful bubble of light that goes out is going to do all the work. So we don't want to try to see the outcome. We don't want to say, oh, we need to heal Jack and Sally, or we got to get rid of this entity, or we got to do anything. We just want to step back, send out that light, and let it go. And know that this is working. And know that this is working throughout all time, space, dimensions. That this is working front ways in time and back ways in time. So at any time you go to look at that, it's like you're doing the work right then and there. So anybody that comes into that space at any time, that all occurs for them. So now then, let's go back to do our personal again. So let's come back to right here, and let's go into our column of light again. We are standing grounded, connected. Now with ourselves, we can have the intention of clearing all timelines and realities that no longer serve us, as well as clearing all programs and beliefs that no longer serve us. We take in that breath, release, and just let go of it. Just trusting the soul. So now then you have that sacred space around you. You have that big bubble, and you're holding that wand. And my daughter was calling me, and I had to shut off my phone. So, again, we're a column of light. We're holding our golden light rods, and we have that space around us. I'm going to have you invite somebody into your space, somebody that you wish to hand this rod to, whether it's your significant other, your children, whoever. Invite them into the space, and as they step in, just hold out that rod for them. They will choose whether to take it or not. We're not trying to fix them. We're not trying to clear them. We're just holding the space for that to occur if their soul chooses. Because it's their soul that comes in. You can invite as many people into your space as you can hold your attention onto. Invite them all in. Hold that rod. So your space, that big old bubble, that sacred circle, however it is for you, just bring in all those people that you wish. And now then, as you have that place full, let's do the 3x3 again. You stand as a column of light. Bring me in as a column of light. My sister Brenda will hold space. Then bring in 3 blue columns of light. You don't have to know who they are. Bring in the elementals and the earth dragons and all that. Then bring in those greater councils. Now then invite each and every one of those people that stepped into your circle, invite them to step into that quantum void space. That just clears all the cords, contracts, oaths, vows, promises, connects them. It does the activations with them if their soul chooses. It does that sacred heart, the quantum mind. All right, and you can step out of that space, but yet that space is still held. Things will occur as it needs to be. But let's step right back into here again. So you guys did a lot of work right there. I mean, you guys brought in a lot of people and did some fantastic things. And it's amazing to watch how things will shift in your lives. People will be different and they don't know why. And they don't need to know why. You can tell them if you wish, if they can accept it, but otherwise it's all good. So, the dowsing rod. So, we have this spinny rod here. It's pretty squirrely. And you guys can play with this as a dowsing rod. Now, the reason that I handed out one rod and I try to get people to use just one rod, you can use two. Now, the traditional way of using a dowsing rod is you have two rods and you'll ask for a yes and they'll cross or go backwards, and then you'll ask for a no and they'll go away from each other. Well, you can do that with one rod. You don't need the two. And that's the same with finding a field. If you're looking for the energetic field of a bottle of water, or you're looking for a geomagnetic line or an electrical fuse box field, whatever it is, you have the intention of finding that field and you walk towards it, and then the rod turns when you get to that field. So a really fun exercise, which if we would have had a larger space, we would just done that, is we set up a bottle of water and we do what we call light anchoring, which we're going to learn here in a second. And we would anchor a column of light into that bottle of water. But before we do, we'd actually find the energetic field of the bottle of water with the dowsing rod. And we'd find that that field may be like 7 feet out. We anchor a column of light into that bottle of water, then we look for the energy field of that water, and it'll move sometimes hundreds of yards away. So that's really a fun exercise to do with water and anchoring columns of light. So our next exercise, columns of light. So, when I first started waking up, I was a municipal water operator, and I had like 4 or 5 communities that I was the municipal water operator in, because in South Dakota we just have tiny communities. So I went around and checked all their water all the time and everything, and as soon as I started getting into the whole energy thing, I was anchoring columns of light. And a column of light is simply going into the heart space and watching, intending, visualizing, and visualization is the biggest thing. And I don't know if any of you guys had really good visualization skills when you were doing any of the work today, but the visualization, imagination, and being in the heart space are the things that make this stuff real. You can visualize up here from the head all you want, and you're just spinning your wheels. But when you go in the heart space and you have those intentions and visualize, man, things happen. So when you go into the heart space and you intend and visualize a column of light coming from Source, Creation, God, Central Sun, however you see and say it, and that column of light comes down and it goes into the earth and it anchors into the earth, that column of light will stay there for 8 days and then it dissipates unless you put your attention back onto it. So I would always anchor columns of light into the wellheads and the municipal water tank holding spots. And that raises the frequency and vibration of the water. But I had so many of these that it's like, man, I started taking pictures of them all. It's like, okay, I'm going to put my attention onto this every week so that way I can hold these columns of light anchored there. And that got to be a chore. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to have this column of light held there and anchored. And so my sister's like, well, create a grid. So they were like, okay. So in 2012, December 21st, we created what we called the Global Love and Gratitude Grid. And this was simply, we'd anchor a column of light into a water source. Then we anchored another column of light into another water source. And then we watched as the 2 columns of light connected. And we asked, and we did a whole bunch of other work there. We asked Gaia to hold those anchors of light, and we asked, for the frequencies of love and gratitude to come through those anchors of light. And so that's why we called it the Global Love and Gratitude Grid, is because it brought the frequencies of love and gratitude through there. So once we started doing that, those columns of light would hold. So we didn't have to put our attention back to it. And so they are all over the world. I mean, in the beginning, we were doing this, and we were really pushing this whole thing, that Global Love and Gratitude Grid. There's still a website out there for it. But people all over the world were doing this, and they were connecting it into all these. In 2015, Gaia was doing this big shift with all these different grids, and she sloughed off a whole bunch of non-beneficial grids. And she accepted the global love and gratitude grid as one of her more natural grid systems. So that global love and gratitude grid made up of anchors of light, we also were putting them into cell phone towers. And we were seeing that it changed the frequencies of the cell phone towers to be healthful and beneficial unless the person created them to not be so. So everybody who was unaware of cell phone towers, they were healthful and beneficial. They were bringing through the frequencies of love and gratitude. People who were like, oh, that damn cell phone tower, and were into fear about it, it would create that non-beneficial aspect for them because we are powerful creators. So as long as you weren't in fear of it, it was healthful and beneficial. So the last time I was out here 3 years ago, I mean, every place along this way, there's an anchor. I mean, every mud puddle, every cell phone tower, every waterway, everything, every church, you know, there's anchors everywhere, and there's people that are doing that. So it's really a fun exercise, and I used to teach this in dowsing years ago, is to anchor that column of light into the water bottle like I was talking about. We'd find the energy field of it with our dowsing rod, so I'd love for you guys to experiment with this after class sometime. So find the field of your water, anchor the light, then try to find the field again and see what happens. So this light anchoring thing, super simple, easy. Like I say, go to the heart space, just visualize that column of light, and that was fantastic. I mean, it was really, really a great thing. You could put one over your bed, you could put one in your shower, you could put one anywhere, and it would stay. Then we got this guy, the golden fire. So the golden fire and light is now creating a whole different column of light. So this is what is in the center of this campus, because when we got here yesterday, man, we about fell flat on our faces because the energy's here. And so there was a lot of really old ancient stuff that was here, you know, from way back, and there was like all those wayward ghosts that were stuck within that whole space, and it was, you know, something. So we anchored a column of golden fire and light right into there. You can anchor that column of golden fire and light into cemeteries, and beings are able to cross over. Somebody was asking me about that today during break too, is that they use the Marie Diamond way of using the tensor rings to create a portal, a space for ghosts or waywards, as we call them, to cross over. And so that's something that we've been doing, that I've been teaching that Ghost Busting 101 for several years too, and that's on the website too, about how to just, for spirit release, just to make a big light to allow that consciousness to cross over. Because within the different, for ghosts, the way that many different cultures see it is that after the physical body dies, then the consciousness, the ghost, is here, and then there is a light open for anywhere from 2 to 9 days, depending upon, you know, the people that see it. We see it as being there for like 9 days, that light is open for that consciousness to cross over and then to become full and complete with its soul. So especially within the U.S., there are a lot of people who choose not to go over, and the first reason usually is out of a fear of hell or punishment is a big thing here. A second reason is that they want to stick around to assist a loved one. That's why a lot of people that you work with that have attachments of waywards or ghosts is that they are usually a family lineage thing. Your great-great-grandpa died. He said, nope, I'm sticking around to help grandma. She died. She said, heck with that, I'm crossing over. And then he had to stick with somebody, because a ghost has to receive energy from either people or places in order to survive on this plane. And that's why on geomagnetic lines, so the geomagnetic lines, if you do clearing work and you find like an apartment building that has a geomagnetic line through it and is so haunted, it's because they have to follow those lines. And so that's another reason of moving those lines around spaces, is because then that just keeps those beings from having to walk through there and be within that space. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so you move the line, how does that not affect somebody else?
Well, oh, sure. So like if we were going to move the line around this building, basically it just goes around the perimeter. And so it's, again, we're stepping back and leaving that to our higher consciousness that has that higher vantage point of where that's moved. So it's always done in the highest and best good for all. And that's the beautiful thing about any of the energy work that we do when we come from the heart space, is that we know that whatever we do is in the highest and best for everybody. And so that way, when we're doing all this crazy energy work and we try to do something and it's just not taken, we just have to be like, well, you know, I guess that's not in the highest and best good for that to take. Yes, ma'am?
Do you ever find that energy lines that don't want to move or are not ready to move?
Nope. Never met an entity that didn't want to cross over, and you know, no. Usually there's always a way. Yes, ma'am.
I've done a little bit with dowsing and like moving a water line that was in somebody's bedroom, but then like a couple weeks later it was back. So how do you do it and make sure that it's permanent?
Oh, right. So that would be kind of like anchoring a column of light, and that's the same one I was telling about when we were working in the library and we first made that intention of those geomagnetic lines just going up and over. I'm sure that they went back again after our attention was no longer there. So it was there, you know, you moved that because that was part of your attention. And so it's the same as anchoring a column of light. So if you use the golden light rod to do that, as I said during the meditation, when you look at that, it's like you're doing that at that moment, whether it's in the past or the future. So this transcends time. And so with these columns of light, and that's the same with the golden fire and light, when we anchor a column of light, which we'll do here in a minute, that column of light will stay there for as long as needed. It could be infinite, it could be days. So, and using a column of light around a spot will do the same. It'll move or clear those geomagnetic lines. You bet. So let's see. So yeah, as far as the clearing work for ghosts, I mean, for years I was trying to make a tool that would automatically clear them, because I mean, I'd go into a Safeway or Walmart and I'd have like 5 flipping spirits there, and I'd be like, man, why don't you guys just wait in the car? And they would, you know, and you'd go and you'd open up the light for them to go across. And so for years I was trying to make a tool that would automatically do it, and we could never find anything. But then this golden fire came along. And the reason that this golden fire works is because, so you're working with a wayward or a ghost, and you try to talk them into crossing over, because that's the thing, is that they have free will. They can choose whether they cross over into the light or not. And so usually, you know, we'd have to like talk them into it. You know, you're not really going to get punished. You know, you don't have to worry about hell. You're okay. And, you know, and it's just like time consuming and tired to talk to every wayward that would come along. So now the work that we're doing, and with this golden fire, and while I was talking about how we used to take entities and we'd ball them up and send them to source, to, you know, Central Sun for recycling, and when we had to start working with them as a conscious being, and we'd activate that fire within their heart. As soon as you activate that fire within their heart, what that is doing is that is connecting to their higher soul self. So we do that to ghosts. So when they come into your field, all we're doing is we are connecting them to their soul, and their soul is the one who comes and takes them over. So we don't have to open the light, because their soul just comes and connects with them and takes them across. Super simple, easy. And that's the way it works with the entities too. Because then when we ignite that golden fire within the heart, that's clearing the cords and contracts, oaths, vows, promises that kept them here and doing what they were doing. And when we activate that sacred fire, then all those are cleared, so that then they are able to just go and do something different. Yes, ma'am.
I live in Manhattan. There's a huge number of heroin junkies. They're like living ghosts.
Uh-huh.
Do you think it's ethical, appropriate to...
Very much appropriate, because what we found out is my etheric templates to my tools were only tainted once, and that is because marijuana, Mary Jane. So I walked with Mary Jane quite a bit in my younger adult life, and I can no longer walk with her because she is an entity. And so for me, she does exactly what it is that I was looking for when I smoked, was that it cuts off my connection. And so One day I was in twisting up the tools, and even though I hadn't smoked, she was still walking with me. She had a backdoor access to my etheric templates, tainted them all. So we had to go through and clear them. So like when you work with somebody that, like the meth entity, man, now she's a wicked one. So all these different things have entities. It's the same with the pharmaceutical industry. That's why my dad could not take pharmaceuticals. It wasn't because of the physiological reaction. It was because of the energetic reaction of that whole energy field, consciousness, everything that was associated with that specific medication. So with the heroin addicts, yes, that is, and that's the same with like somebody who has marijuana knocking on their door all the time. It's not necessarily the physical stuff that is causing them to want to smoke. It's the entity aspect of them. And so that's the way it is with all different forms of things. So like shaman who take people through these different ceremonies, they are working with that spiritual aspect of the plant. And so when you're working with the plant medicine, it's not just the physiological, it's that spiritual. Yes, ma'am.
If somebody is on the Suboxone program or methadone program, does that also block their connection, seeing that
It feels like it does to me. But I've never met a pharmaceutical that was beneficial, so I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what about with the Rick Simpson level, which is, marijuana, but taken for medical reasons? Some people are using medical marijuana for their illness.
So I've taken CBD a bit recently, and I found that the CBD does not have that that same Mary Jane is not attached to that CBD. So it just depends on probably the manufacturer and so I imagine there's something that comes into play there, whether that is allowed to come through in their product or not.
Their consciousness, the consciousness of the growers.
Oh, that too, yeah. That's where we're trying to get all these rings into all the pot farmers in Colorado, because they're dealing with genetically modified and everything else. And so if we can get these tools into the right hands. But anyway, yes, ma'am.
So if you had CBD oil and you're not sure of the source, you could clear it if it still had the attachment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What about microdosing with LSD? It's a new thing that it's not yet legal here, but it is legal in other some other countries. You take a 10% of what a person would take if they were going to get high.
That's interesting because
Your consciousness, and it does not make you high.
for what you're describing, I don't see an entity attachment with that or a cord. It almost seems like there may be a cord, but I can't really tell. And that's the thing, like with any of the pharmaceuticals or other things, and how it presents to me is I'll see a cord, and that cord will go from that to the consciousness. But the thing is if you can see this stuff, if you see the cord or the consciousness that's associated with that, all you do is you run that golden fire. And you run that golden fire up that cord, and that's the same with the cord with yourself or with a cord with another person. If you see there isn't a connection there, a cord, no cords are beneficial. No cords serve a higher purpose. And so you just send that golden fire, that golden light, through that cord. And so you can clear that, even if there is one. But I did not see one with that. I mean, there was one, but it was really faint. So I think it probably depends upon the person and intention and knowingness with that. Yes, ma'am.
plant medicine, go back to like ayahuasca, plant medicine, for journeying purposes?
Uh-huh.
Is it not beneficial because of what we talked about?
Well, and that's the thing is to me, I don't really, it's not within my path and my journey to work with those different beings, because I feel that they do work with people and they are a tool for people to understand higher consciousness and everything, but they can only take you so far. So that's why I really would rather rely upon my own self to take me to that spot. But, I think just being aware and knowledgeable of that is an entity, because that's the job of a shaman, is that they are there to be an interface between that plant entity and you. That's their job. So, I mean, really, people talk about, oh no, man, I'm just going to go take ayahuasca myself. That's cool as long as you are able to interface with that entity. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you extrapolate that to take it over to GMO foods and all the chemicals they're using in the foods? Do they also have that entity behind them?
So, GMO foods is an interesting thing. Now, we've seen that you put a ring around a seed, GMO seed, and by the time it germinates, it is back to its original DNA. We've seen that you have a seedling, you put a ring around it, or your consciousness. These are just placeholders. That you can work with a seedling, and by the time it is an adult, it will have changed its DNA back to its original DNA. We've also seen, like Marty Lucas has talked about too, how he's an organic corn grower, and he's surrounded by GMO. And his belief is that if you leave a plant for 3 consecutive years, that Mother Nature itself and the plant will bring itself back to its proper original DNA. So as far as working with the food, what we've seen is when you're taking food or medications, like my daughter, she's 7 years old, and her mom was always on more of the medical side of things. And so I succumbed to letting her receive a few immunization stuffs. And what we found was that you can change almost anything. We only found one thing that we could not change the energy from to become healthful and beneficial to her, and that was a nebulizer, so we didn't give it to her. But otherwise, everything else, food, medications, supplements, even vaccinations, you can change with your light for that to be healthful and beneficial. So we may not be affecting the physical structure of it, but maybe we are. Because everything is energy and manifests into the physical. Just like the rings do with water. They make water lighter in weight in the lab. They bring it to its original crystalline structure. All of that stuff. And that's something that we can all do with our light too. So we can change the physical. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said putting the ring around a GMO seed will change the thing. In the process of the plant growing, I live in Iowa, so I see everything.
Right.
The process of the seed growing, they will spray Roundup on it, kill the weeds. They'll spray before, they'll spray after, then they'll spray sometimes a fungicide, sometimes a herbicide throughout the summer. So this is going on, and I was like, is that an ongoing thing you have to do, or is the seed?
Well,
I don't have time to around every corn plant.
And that's an interesting concept where if you could change the seed at the seedling, to me it would seem like as soon as they go through and they spray their Roundup Ready crop and it's no longer Roundup Ready, that it would just kill it.
Do you think? That's what I was thinking.
But
taking the seed, but they're still gonna
right.
They want a clean field. They don't want anything in it.
Yeah. And that's something that I've always wanted somebody to experiment with, is to work with a field and have these tools out, because there's actually specific configurations of tools that Slim gave us years ago that you could put into a field, and it has a 100-yard influence that it will do that work. And so I would love to see somebody put one of those in a field and see if there's actually a big 100-yard circle to where all the corn dies as soon as they spray it with Roundup. Yes, ma'am. What's that? I'm unfamiliar with biodynamic farming.
I'm not terribly familiar, but I do know that they use a higher level, a step beyond organic farming that does not use any. It's kind of like homeopathic almost. They do things like burying, mulch in the dirt, hit the dirt so many times, or spin it. It's kind of like, it's pretty complicated. It tries to do a little bit of it.
Interesting. Yes, ma'am.
How do you confirm the change? How do you see it?
So just like how do we confirm the change or see it? And so that's the thing is, when Slim was around, he relied on clairvoyance and psychics in order to show what the things were doing. And that's what we have to rely on too when we create these, because in the beginning I could not see or feel energy. And so I had to rely on these people who said that they could see the color of sound change. I still can't see the color of sound, but I ran across enough people who have seen the same thing happen that I am a firm believer in it. So for me, myself, but for me, I rely on my sister because my sister sees energy. She is one who's not taken down rabbit holes. And so whenever we come up with a new tool, I have my sister do a reading on it, and then we send it out, and we have other people do readings on it and give the feedback to it. And then we take all that like feedback, and then I feel very confident about putting out a description on the tools because I do not want to mislead anybody on this stuff and say, okay, yeah, let's believe this enough and it'll be true. No, it's not, I feel like I have a lot of ethical responsibility on what it is that we put out for information on the tools. But, it's really, my sister is the big one. We have done biofeedback studies on the cell phone tabs, and with that it shows that it aligns chakras and energy bodies and makes organs function better when you use this to repurpose it. Water is a huge one. We're actually featured in the second edition of the new Science of Water, and they've done all the research on water, and what the tensor fields do with water is they're bringing it to that crystalline structure of H2O. It makes it lighter in weight in the lab, kind of like ormus, because like the white powdered gold ormus, you put it on a scale and it oscillates. The measurements go up and down because it is oscillating in and out of this physical reality because it has such a high spin rate. And that's the same that the water is doing, is the water actually oscillates in and out of the physical reality, making it lighter in weight. So we can see what the tensor fields and the energy work does with water, and that's one scientific validation, as well as the biofeedback studies that we've done. But otherwise, as far as seeing a tensor field and measuring it, you used to be able to, like I said, with like the slim Sperling tools, you used to be able to use an oscilloscope to find the exact frequency within that ring. But now, since we've been working with such higher level rings, there's no way to measure that. So experiential is the biggest thing. That and the feedback. I mean, we hear of flipping miracles and magic every day. We have people that will call, write, everything that tell of what it is that these tools have done for them. And then plus the energy work that my sister does. Like my sister, when I was very, very science-minded when I first got into this, is my sister and the healing work that blew me away, because anymore, if I have a rib out, I just call her up and say, hey, Brenda, can you put my rib back in? I can feel it just shift right back into place. And anymore, I don't even have to call her. I'm like, hey, Brenda. And then all of a sudden, I just feel my body shift and it's back into place. So, I mean, it's really that the experiential is truly the way that we can measure this stuff. Because so much of what occurs, like the work that we did today when we cleared timelines and realities, I could feel that shifting for people because I am very sensitive to that bandwidth in that scene. I mean, to me, it looks like you go out and you clear all this stuff and then you come back. And to me, that's how it presents when you guys are clearing timelines and realities. Other people may not see or feel any shift, even though I did witness a lot of you guys actually feeling shifts when we did the timeline and reality clearing work. So
Can we say, hey, Brenda?
you can. She's been holding space here the whole time. So since she channels the Elders 3, which the Elders 3 is in the back of the book here, of the catalog, the Elders 3, when they do all their channels, they always say, yeah, call upon us at any time. And it was later on in our experience that she found out that the Elders 3 is her, that those are just soul aspects of her. So, and we used to listen to Lee Carroll and cry on. He always talked about, oh, your guides, they're just you. And, I could never wrap my head around that and figure that out. Yeah, I totally believe that all of our guides, even the angelics and the dragons and whoever, are just a soul aspect of us because we are so huge as a soul. I mean, I know I'm a master angelic. I know I'm a dragon. I know I'm some butthead over there standing on geomagnetic lines getting in trouble. You know, we have all aspects of us.
Is that her next to you?
Yeah, Brenda is the one that is... Oh, no, that's my other sister, Billy. Brenda's the one that's standing in the back between us. And then Lucas is standing to her left, right behind Billy, and that's my shop foreman, and that's my family and other friends who are back running the shop while I'm gone. Yes, ma'am.
I've gone to YouTube and to your site and watched several of your videos and several of your sisters. I don't remember which one of you, I think it goes back to a video from maybe 2016, but somebody mentioned a book that was almost ready. I think it was called Solstice.
Oh, you know, I had the Harmony Handbook and Multidimensional Primer was the book that I wrote, and it had to be ready by solstice. You know, I had 2 weeks to write it. So I wrote this 48-page manual in 2 weeks and published it. And it's basically just the consciousness work that we did in the first chamber. And so that's a lot of the work that we did today, but it's actually older stuff because, you know, it's about going soul to soul and crossing over waywards and things like that. And, you know, and again, that was the older energy way of doing things, of crossing over waywards. And actually, we need to get to that here because so we don't run out of time. Light anchoring. It is. You know, it's I have it for like $11, or you can go and download the PDF for free on the website. So, yeah, you can get the free PDF. Cool, yeah. Otherwise, I got copies here. I got copies of the Dances with Water book. So if anybody is interested in working with water, this is one of the most phenomenal books on the market because they work directly with the scientific model. They won't tell you this, but they channel Slim and they channel Victor Schlauberger and all those guys. So they bring in the channeled information as well as very science-based. And then they make it to where everybody can understand it. And plus, we're featured in there, so I like to push that book. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Brian, I have a question about the chemtrails. Can we use the pillars of light for...
Yes, because that is a reality. In the very beginning, somebody was like, okay, chemtrails. What do we do with chemtrails? Well, we were looking at chemtrails. They were showing us that nobody was putting anything in planes. In the very beginning, they were showing us that somebody created a local reality. Hey, chemtrails! And everybody else, because we are powerful creators, and we have traditionally created out of fear and out of the heart. Head, sorry. We've been creating out of the head, out of fear. Fear is a powerful, powerful energy for creation. So that's been our duality little process here. So somebody's like, chemtrails. There was chemtrails in that local reality. Somebody over here is like, oh, chemtrails. Yeah, we got chemtrails. It became another local reality. Then that spread to become more of a greater reality. So just like we can move clouds, just like we can clear cancer, just like we can do anything in this physical reality, we can clear chemtrails. So yes, the tools work great for clearing chemtrails because it changes that reality. And that reality is not held on very tightly anymore. And that's the thing, is that this whole world, I mean, and on Saturday we're going to talk about that a lot too, is about the old energy systems, the old matrices that were from geomancy, because you think of the pyramids as being a geomancy, as holding a physical reality. Well, then those who used to be in control of the planet were here, and they did the same geomancy with obelisks and courthouses and church steeples and everything else, and they created diverted geomagnetic lines and created larger structures of reality. And all that stuff is disassembled and gone. The only thing that is holding the old structure of reality, of that duality and the old consciousness here, is us and a little bit of the media and some fear. Otherwise, we are totally all there holding space, because we are all masters that are here on this planet. There's none of us that are not a master that are here in this room right now. And we're just holding space for ourselves. And we can change these realities. click in. Yes, ma'am.
When we clear all this, what goes into the space?
When we clear it, what goes into the space? Aha, cool. So the golden light, the field of universal peace. So the field of universal peace is a huge one because like I was telling you when we were dealing with the big entities, and instead we bring in that field of universal peace and we bring that into their heart, they would totally change everything. So what we're bringing into this place, actually we're going to do that right now. We're going to go and we're just going to do the universal light activation. And we will step into that mastery part of ourselves where we're holding space and create a larger grid network. And that is where we're seeing that we are holding, instead of relying on the old grid systems like the pyramids and things like that, where that we're very much holding this in that third density reality, we are seeing that this whole new earth, or however you say it, is us as being the anchor points for this greater grid. And so we are holding that grid in that field of universal peace, the universal light, unconditional love, all that stuff, the golden fire. So, all right, let's do this again. And you can use your rod or not. I always like to have a tool. It's just easy. So we're going to take our 3 breaths and go into the heart again. Again, we're going to breathe up from the earth into the heart. Breathe in from source, soul, creator, God, into the heart. And then take that 3rd breath of earth, sky, and you, and mix it all together within the heart. And so as you're in the heart space and you have your light in its entirety, you have the golden fire, you have the field of universal peace, we're going to see in the basement of the heart, we are going to dissolve the floor of your heart and drop down into that basement of the heart. As you drop your light into the heart, into that basement, it might be dark, sticky. Just drop your light. Your light is your divine awareness. When divine awareness hits dark, sticky energy is nothing but creation. We're just going to change it with our divine awareness. So as your light comes in there, it clears all of that within the basement of the heart. So on the walls of your heart, if you notice any of these little shields or doors, just pop those little shields or doors off. Those go out to cords, contracts. Send your light, that fire, that field of universal peace. Send all of that to those little doors, out those cords. Down from within that basement of the heart is where all the cords and contracts that held us into that old way of being, that is where they were stored. So again, just however you use that light or that fire, set it all on fire, shine your light, bring that field of peace, however you feel. Cool, I forgot what we were doing now. What were we doing? Yeah, we're going to anchor lights. All right, so now that you've found that basement of the heart, you can have full access to your entire heart. That is something that eluded us for many years. and we could not figure out why we were still playing in the old game and the old matrix. It was because we had all of our contracts hidden down there. So when we've been doing this work throughout the entire multiverse, all of those beings who appear to be non-beneficial beings who are really a part of divinity were playing their part as well. So this duality matrix that we've been playing in here as humans, they've been playing in throughout this entire universe. They've just been helping us do it. And so the work that we do is clearing all of that farther out there. So what we do right now is doing more than just us right here on this leading edge of expansion on this planet. This is huge. So we're going to anchor lights. So again, as you're holding that rod, and if you see this rod in a space where you want to anchor the light, it could be right here at your desk, it could be at your dorm room here, it could be wherever you want to anchor a light. Think of that space and just watch as that golden fire and that field of universal peace and your light and that light from source and the light from earth all come together and create a column of light. You can expand that column out if you so choose. To me, mine's usually about 20 feet across. You can make it smaller, you can make it larger. Now picture a cell phone tower in your neighborhood. See that tower? See this column of light come down right through it. Without judgment. Just a column of light on the tower. You know where your water comes from? Picture that water tank or that well, your municipal water tanks. Watch that column of light go through there. You can do this anywhere. You can do it at every intersection of road that you come to. You can do it at the checkout line that you're standing at. You do it in every public bathroom you go into. It doesn't matter. Nothing's sacred, everything's sacred. Just do it everywhere. I don't know if anybody else can see or feel what's going on in here, but man, this is huge.
Yeah.
If it's in the highest and best good, it will happen. Yes. Yes. Well, and that's the thing, is that once you start to do things with an agenda, the field won't hold. And so that's a really tough thing that's like dowsing with emotional questions. You get that part of you in there and it collapses the field. So you have to very much be in your heart space, not be in any fear and any judgment. And then you can anchor that light into Washington, the Vatican, military, wherever it is. So we have a little handbook to go with these wands too that we'll hand out to you guys. So be sure you guys each get one of these. There's a little 8-page handbook that walks you through the process. So another thing you can do with these guys, it's really fun. Use it as a wand to run energy. So what I like to have people do, especially if people aren't sensitive to energy, I'll usually have them wand their left palm. So you can do it in circles, counterclockwise, clockwise, figure eights, don't matter. Just make a motion and point it right at your palm and see if you can feel that. Cool. So if you can feel that energy like that, now then, take your palm, and as soon as you can feel it, take your palm away. Now then wand and pretend your palm is right there and see if you can still feel it. Or else your big toe. Try to wand your big toe without pointing at it. I'm wanding my left ankle and I can feel it like my wand is right there on it. So then you can also use this for things at a distance. You have a pet at home, a sick plant in your yard. Visualize it, run the energy. Have a situation that's bothering you, put that situation right there, wand the situation. Yes, ma'am.
Clean the one?
Nope.
Any of these stuff?
Nope. Energetically, yep. They always stay clean and clear energetically. Yep. Try it with different things. Wand your water. So you can actually stir your water. I wouldn't leave your wand in there. That's in the instructions that you don't want to leave your wand sitting in water. But try to wand your water and do a before and after taste test. If you're into crystals, wand your crystal for a minute. Holy smokes, does that supercharge them? Nope. Right. Nope. It's because this also does the activation with the crystals. The consciousness of the crystals. Crystals love the tensor fields, love the wands, all that because it helps amplify them. It's a carrier wave. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about the star?
Oh yeah. Oh, so yeah, I did forget to even mention this. So Bill Reed, who I mentioned in the beginning, he was the guy who worked with Slim Sperling in the beginning, and they were working with the straight line cubit measures. Then there was another guy after they found the straight line cubit measures, Simon Balaboa from Colorado, because these guys were all played around in Colorado area and the Denver area, and so Simon, he's like, wow, we can take these measurements that you guys got from the pyramids, and he's like, there's these old measurements. So he put them like this to create this form. Now, Bill Reed called these the starbursts, and he was selling them. Now, Simon's the one who discovered this, and it has something to do with the geometries and the mathematical ratios and everything else. So there was something very math and geometry about this guy. The original ones that Bill were making were the straight line cubit measures that came out of the Great Pyramid. And together like that, it was creating a sacred space, and it would restructure electromagnetics and everything else. I took a class with Bill Reed, gravitobiology, and it was really interesting. I found out about these, but they just didn't feel right to me. He always had a tensor ring on them and stuff. So I played around with them one day, and I moved this part here. I moved down in a phi ratio, and I came up with this cross-looking thing. And this was several years ago, and we called them, they were a key, is what they presented as. And we found out later that this key is called Untak, the Ankh of the now time. This Untak, Ankh, was something that was tattooed on initiate's chest in the pre-Egyptian times. It was, the stuff was found like on the breastplate of the armor of like Hercules that the gods made for him, things like that. But I mean, people were starting to see, and that's when I first ran across, or my sister first ran across these beings that called me the master builder. And I thought, as well, it's because I do a good job of putting together physical tools. No, it was because I was creating things on that higher dimensional plane and had been for many lifetimes before I came here. And so this Untak key it's that Ankh of the now time. So this guy here is one of the tools that is doing the automatic clearing work. So as I wear this, anybody wears this, they go out and automatically clears all the ghosts, waywards, entities, all that stuff that you come into contact with. So we quit making them there for quite some time. We quit making them for a number of years, these keys, and we never made them this small. They were always larger keys, the Untoks. And then we made the Atlantean ones, the Ulites, and things like that. And we made a few different varieties based on different measurements. And they just didn't feel right anymore. So Bill Reed passed on this earlier this spring, and so I had been wanting to make the starbursts again and the keys for quite some time. And after he passed, I was like, well, I'm going to do a tribute to Bill, and I'm going to make the starbursts. And so we used the Golden Fire in the standard Teotihuacan unit. So we had two wands prior to this that were, one was the Golden Light wand. We had it in a mini version. And then the Golden Fire, because I was telling you guys when that first came to being, they showed us that blue rod. Well, the Golden Fire was one that we saw that when you were actually wanding something with it, we were seeing that it was working on the physical cells. We were seeing that it was raising the light quotient of the physical cells. And so it was working on the physical instead of us always doing the work energetically and manifesting in the physical. We were seeing that these guys were growing directly into the physical as well as the energetic. So that was what we made the Starburst with. And the Starburst did not have an etheric template. So before, when we made these Untok, the keys, we were seeing like people that had an entity attachment would get up, and they'd start spinning this thing, and they were shooting crap all over the place because straight line cubit measures can be used for beneficial or non-beneficial. Where the tensor rings, the military came in when Slim was around, they could not use the tensor rings because they would only transmit through the fields what was healthful and beneficial. It's a heart-based technology. So they could not send out negative thought forms through these fields. It would collapse them. So the tensor fields you cannot use for non-beneficial purposes. The straight line measures, though, I had, I used to have those conspiracy theories of everything in the world being manufactured out of straight line cubit measures because they hold frequencies and they hold the space for non-beneficial things, So I always felt that, streets and bricks and lampposts and all that crap were made out of certain specific straight line cubit measures that held frequencies. Who knows? But I do know that you can hijack a straight line cubit measure. But this guy, we made an etheric template for. So the etheric template, now this becomes healthful and beneficial. So it cannot be hijacked unless you go through me to get to the templates. And they're very well guided, guarded, protected. So then we made Untok the key after that too, which has just been really a fantastic tool. I love this little guy. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you expound on the dragons? Because no one talks about the dragons.
Sure, and actually that's what half my talk is going to be on Saturday is about the dragons because, we make the dragon wands, everything else. Basically, the dragons the earth dragons are the ones who create the geomagnetic lines in the first place that then get diverted by pyramids, obelisks, steeples, things like that. So the dragons are the ones who create the geomagnetic lines. There's dragons on every planet. We have an abnormal number of dragons on this planet because basically they were all hijacked to come here. You always see Archangel Michael as the dragon slayer. No, man, Archangel Michael is not a dragon slayer, but the Catholic Church and all churches built before 1946 harnessed the dragons against their free will to create the grid systems that were the non-beneficial grid systems that were anchored into all religious institutions. They're anchored into college campuses. They're anchored into Masonics. They're anchored into all your state capitol buildings. I mean, I always thought of from a sociological perspective that the reason that they built things on top of sacred sites was for social control, but it was energetic control because sacred sites are always set up for the intersecting of geomagnetic lines. And so when any conquering nation comes in, they build their stuff right on top of sacred sites because it is a form of energetic control. And so the dragons are part of that. So Basically, we did all the freeing of all those dragons. So all those different grid systems are clear. There's a few minor exceptions, but yeah. So the dragons are quite the beings, and and we called them in to hold one point on that 3x3. And a lot of people are a little scared of dragons because they think of them as either the reptilians or they think of them bad from the Catholicist point of view. But dragons are actually really fantastic beings. They're no different than, let's say, an angelic being or a Pleiadian. They're just a different being. And there's all different forms of dragons that are inhabiting the planet. But most of them, when they came here, they were in the physical. After they died, there was a certain way that they were brought back in. They reincarnate into the physical human body, and then they lose their soul codes, and then they're stuck here until their soul codes are completed, which we're doing all that right now. That's part of everything anymore, is that because you meet a lot of people who you're like, hey, you're a dragon, or a dragon walks with you, or whatever, and it's their soul aspect. It's them as a dragon. Yes, ma'am. Could be. I don't know. Yep, it very well could be. Because I do recognize a lot of people as dragons, as part of who I see them as their soul. That part of them presents, but I don't see it with everybody. Probably maybe a fifth or sixth of the population probably I notice that the dragons present to me. But yeah, we worked with them for a number of years for all the healing work, whether it was the Dragon's Fire. We worked with the Council of Six Dragons, and they would do, the breath work, the sound work, all this different stuff for different healing, clearing stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Do all dragons breathe fire?
Nope. Some are sound, some are breath, some are heart. Yeah. Yep. And I only know through the experience stuff because I never really did do much research and studying on the dragons, so it's just all what's came and presented. But it looks like we are high noon, so if any of you guys feel like still staying here and playing, you're welcome to. Like I say, otherwise, I would love for you guys to check out the chamber at some point in time this weekend. We'll have our booth set up. And I know we didn't get anybody up here to teach us how to really use the dowsing rods for a dowsing rod, but and they're available too. We also have like the mahogany wooden boxes for pairs of dowsing rods that come in them and things like that. But we have tons of tools. Yes, please.
These are very sensitive. See how that is? So you're trying to lock in something. Let it tilt down about a half inch. That puts a little bit of drag on it.
Beautiful.
You want a little bit of drag on it. I usually steer at the end of it till it gets a little bit blurry to drop kind of towards the alpha state. Who's got, okay, hold your hand up here. You got any gold on that? Okay, I'm looking for your first name? Charlene's ring. I'm looking for 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 Charlene's ring. That's called a lock. When it swivels, it stays here, and you go this way, that's a lock. That's what you want. You want that end out there hanging in its face, going back and forth. And then you snap it down, and you're starting again to clear that energy. Again, put it down about a half inch, and look for Charlene's ring. Then I hit her energy. Now I come back the other way, come back again, and it's locking on.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys very much for showing today.